And to my favourite part of the week, whiskey with a mate. The whiskey today, again, I got the wrong bottle from my desk. Ardbeg. Not that it's bad, it's just that I had it last week. And it's so peaty, a bit too smoky for me as well, a bit too smoky. So I've got my whiskey, but I don't have my mate. My mate, unfortunately, isn't here. We missed each other. She's gone on a motivational or a national speaking tour to tell people about stuff. It started in Adelaide, zipped through Melbourne just when I was my back turned, and she's still got Sydney, Brisbane and other places out east to go. And there it is. It's the Jacinta Price tour, talking about bridging the Indigenous divide. I like those little two PSs on the bottom. No political correctness and no identity politics. And as I say, my mate is, of course, Jacinta Price, Alice Springs councillor, an all-round good person. Jacinta, lovely to see you in the flesh. How's the tour going?
It's going fantastic. It is going so well. The crowds have been lovely. I think people sort of have had an expectation of what they think they're going to hear at one of my where I'm speaking, and look, basically I'm bringing it back to what it means to be human again. And really, for me, it's about creating understanding, and I'm achieving that. So it's been great.
I'm going to call you out. It's not that great, Jacinta, because I have a letter here. I've got a letter from the Coffs Harbour City Council that's been passed on to me. And this letter says that, in fact, you need permission. You need permission to speak at this venue that you've booked from the Coffs Harbour City Council. You need to get the permission from the Gumbayngir Aboriginal people to enter the land at Coffs Harbour. And then you also need permission to speak. Now, I didn't know that you needed permission to speak in this country. That's news to me. Did you see a sort of sign outside as you entered Coffs Harbour? No, no speaking unless permitted?
Well, I haven't quite got there yet, but I'll be looking out for that particular sign when I get there. I mean, look, the interesting thing is that I've got Gumbayngir family. Well, I've got a sister-in-law who's Gumbayngir, who is very, very upset at the fact that this request was placed upon me, and as she said, to her, she views it as cultural bullying. I don't know any Australian who's had to seek permission to, enter. Well, there's those remote communities where you require a permit, but other than that, it's the first time this has sort of ever happened to me, and it's certainly the first time on this tour as well.
I'm just wondering how this operates. Does it mean everyone in Coffs Harbour's had to ask for permission to come and speak, to live there and speak, or is it just applied to you?
Probably just applied to me, which is very interesting. And, yeah, I mean, it is a little bit insulting, and, well, I'm not going to be seeking permission. I have permission from my Gumbayngir sister-in-law. I have more than permission because of our very close relationship. This sort of thing is just political correctness gone way too far. And as everyone knows, this tour isn't about political correctness. This is about authenticity. This is about being real as human beings and not having expectations and not using cultural bullying against other people.
But it also goes to the point of, say, right, that you want to respect Aboriginal culture, but, like each want to respect the culture that we come from, but every culture should change. I mean, there are bits that we don't respect that we actually change, that we leave way in the past, And I'm wondering, does the left really want to encourage a move back to honouring a culture where a woman needs permission to speak? Are they actually thinking this through? A culture where a woman needs a permission to speak? What are they talking about?
It's total backwards step. And, that is often the case, and I talk about this a lot on the tour, is the fact that we as Indigenous people are expected to basically remain in a frozen time, like in a time warp, as part of a culture that's supposed to be never changing. which is a farce in itself, because all cultures have changed, will always change. And if they don't, you simply die as human beings. You have to change culture in order to be able to go forward. And so this is one of those issues that I discuss, and I discuss elements that work against those people that I love in my community, in my family, and how those sorts of things are detrimental for us, and how we in fact need to move forward, just as all cultures of the world have had to do. And this is one of those examples, where the left expect us to go backward, not expect us to be able to continue forward with the rest of humanity, and it's insulting.
I think that's right. I mean, you remind me of something that just came to my mind when I was doing an ABC documentary about constitutional recognition. We went up to Arnhem Land and we were talking to traditional owners there, mostly men, but a few women at the other end of the table. And I said to them, look, you've got terrible absenteeism in your school here, you've got high levels of domestic violence, you've got unemployment, etc., etc. What actual good will constitutional recognition do for that? And they said, well, people then start listening to us and we'll do this and that. The men will rule. And the women then got very shirty and started to speak up, and good on them. But it seems to me that some people are taking refuge in a sort of mode of social control that a lot of other cultures have put behind them. Perhaps not as much as they should have, but have put behind them.
Absolutely, and there are parallels. I've recently met a number of wonderful Muslim women as well who have seen parallels, who have attended my talk and seen parallels between what goes on for Indigenous women and for women who live within the confines of Islam as well. And we are shouted down, we are called names. If we want to suggest we can do things better, within our own cultural or religious confines, for the betterment of all of us, we are called names and we are shut down. And there are those from the left who support that, who support, shutting us women up, speaking about
Jacinta,
these
look, don't talk to me about it. As viewers will know who've followed this show for a while, we've had you on twice to talk about the unbelievable abuse, and I'm not going to show it all again, that's hurled at you, racist abuse from, a lot of it actually from Aboriginal activists, not whites, but some of that too, but it's just quite shocking. It makes me wonder, why do you do this, Jacinta? You could just put up your feet, go with the flow, play the victim card, get a university job, get a government job, stroll into any ABC studio. Why do you do this?
I do this because the same old nonsense would continue if I didn't do it, if I didn't stand up against it. And from being on my speaking tour, I have had Indigenous people come along, and particularly a group of wonderful Indigenous women in Mildura who took me and embraced me and said, thank you so much. Finally, someone is saying what we've been trying to say for so long. And it's those little quiet voices. And there was a man there, also an Indigenous man, who came along who said, I'm really disappointed that not more Indigenous people have come along, because they really need to be able to hear you in person. And we all should be having these sorts of conversations. Even if we don't agree with one another, we should be able to sit down and speak to one another as adults without the insults being hurled at each other, and be respectful toward each other. And that's the only way we're going to be able to move forward. So I'm trying to plant seeds because I want to see real change and not the same old stuff going around and around in a circle, not being fixed. More ideas coming up, like constitutionally enshrining a voice, like changing the date of Australia Day, all these nonsense issues that are that should be sidelined so that we can get on to actually acting for ourselves, taking responsibility and acting for the betterment of our people through action and not symbolic gestures.
But, you mentioned something just there that really, there is a wider issue here. What's happening to you, like this permission to speak idea, which to me is just ludicrous. It seems to me that's part of a wider battle we have to get permission to speak these days. I mean, you've got such a fear of words, you've got the trigger warning things, you can't say this, you can't say that, new codes of speech, you've got defamation law already, you've got boycotts of people that don't say the right thing. You've got riots against people like, I don't know, Milo Yiannopoulos or whatever. You've got deplatforming at the Melbourne Writers, a couple of writers' festivals, even Jermaine Greer. We've got the vilification laws, widely misused to shut down debate on race. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Archbishops dragged into discrimination tribunals. What is going on, do you think, big picture?
Look, it's really the left trying to control everything. Everything is fear-driven. And when I speak out about these issues, I present nothing but facts. I also present my own personal experiences. And what I'm finding is that other Australian people who care very deeply for Indigenous Australia would like to be able to do more. However, they feel as though they're being restricted from being able to do any more because of the fact that their skin is white. Not only that, but I'm talking about people whose family are Indigenous as well. And I think it's deeply racist to basically tell someone you can't say anything about this, you've got nothing to say about this because of the colour of their skin. Everything is fear-driven and it's deliberate to maintain a level of control. So part of what I've been doing is to try and encourage others to stand up, stand your ground and speak the truth. And where you know you can support, just do it.
Yeah, I think you're a little bit weird the way you stand up to everything that's been thrown at you. A lot of other people would just go home and have a cup of tea. You know, what inspires you? Who inspires you, rather? I mean, I would say, obviously, your mother in part, Beth Price, because she, you know, her Beth Price's political career, I think she showed a lot of courage. Your dad, I've talked to him, is a terrific chap. But apart from those, who else?
Look, I'm inspired also by my grandparents. When I'm talking on this tour, I speak about my family history as well, and the way in which, you know, my grandparents on both sides of my family, they really struggled. They really struggled in the face of change, in the face of poverty and all of those sorts of things, and it was a human thing. And I think if they can do what they did in their time, I can do just about anything. And not only that, but my grandfather, my mother's father, taught me never to be anybody's victim, but to be my own person. And he actually supported my mum when she decided that she didn't want to be in an arranged marriage and become a second wife, and at the time was a teenager. She would climb up a tree or up onto a building and threaten to jump off. Now, she did that many times. This is the rebellious mother of mine who went against the cultural norms. But my grandfather supported her in the end. He supported her, and in fact, so did my mother's traditional promised husband. So they saw the world was changing, and that's where I get my inspiration from, knowing that if you can provide the evidence, if you can push and show the truth enough, people will start to understand and will understand that this change is inevitable and it's necessary and it should be done together.
Yeah, but you know what really strikes me about what you just said is, you know, we're talking about who inspires you, positive models. You talked earlier about people that also identify as Aboriginal, so, you know, we'd like to speak more about this too. You know, doing and changing and all that, we don't hear that. In the media, mass media, you tend to hear victim stories only. And it's not just in the Aboriginal space. I mean, yesterday I showed an extraordinary letter that the BHP put out, asking, you know, offering 3 scholarships to people who could most demonstrate that they'd been discriminated against on the grounds of their gender or sexual orientation. You know, not a word there about, you know, enthusiasm and can-do and challenges overcome. No, they wanted victims. That's the context, isn't it? The cult of victimhood.
Absolutely. And those that encourage it are doing the wrong thing by other human beings. By telling somebody that they are a victim is basically taking away, is removing their agency. It's telling them that they are not capable whatsoever of standing on their own 2 feet as human beings, no matter what their sexuality, no matter what their gender, no matter what their race, that they are capable of extraordinary things, of everything and anything, and lowering standards for them, basically, lowering the bar for them.
It's
and
pathetic.
That is, It's disgusting. It's not healthy. It's really not
Now,
healthy
quickly,
at all.
I've got to interrupt because before we go, quickly tell us where can people catch up with where you are and where can they book tickets?
Sure. So on Saturday night, I'm at one of the UTS theatres here in Sydney, and then I've got Newcastle, followed by Coffs Harbour, then Brisbane,
And you can go to
Toowoomba.
True Arrow Events. Is that it? True Arrow Events on the website.
True Arrow Events, yes.
Terrific. Jacinta Price, as always, wonderful to speak to you. Have a great rest of the tour.